friends. I missed you last week. It's hard not to be here with you. Did you know I wasn't here? But I get to be here with you today, and that's what counts. I'm actually going to be away next week as well. It's kind of my little mini summer thing. So today is what counts. I have a reading to you from Parker Palmer. He wrote a book called Let Your Life Speak. Here's an excerpt. How are we listening to our lives? This is a question worth exploring. In our culture, we tend to gather information in ways that do not work very well when the source is the human soul. The soul is not responsive to subpoenas or cross-examination. At best, the soul will stand in the dock only long enough to plead the Fifth Amendment. At worst, your soul will jump bail and never be heard from again. The soul speaks its quiet truth only under inviting and trustworthy conditions. The soul is like a wild animal. It's tough, resilient, savvy, self-sufficient, and exceedingly shy. If we want to see a wild animal, the last thing we do is go crashing through the woods, shouting for the creature to come out. But if we are willing to walk quietly into the woods and sit silently for an hour or two at the base of a tree, the creature we are waiting for may well emerge. And out of the corner of our eye, we will catch a glimpse of this precious wildness we seek. It's really such a blessing to be a part of this community, to be held up in sisterhood, and to be one with a movement that requires us to dive deeply into truth. And that feels like my calling. So this month was really fun. I got to sit with the idea of purpose. What is this thing that is purpose? And what I do when I'm beginning to think of a talk is I open up and I ask, what is the idea of this talk that I am going to give? And so I get quiet and I listen, and we call that meditation. And this time, when I sat down, I did something different. I lit some sage, which sometimes I do, but not normally when I'm meditating. I lit some sage and I put it in the little vessel I use and I set it in the window. And then I got quiet and I opened up. But right as I set the sage in the window, the wind picked up and it started to come in the window. And if you've ever burned sage, what happens is if you light it, it gets a nice little faint scent and then it kind of peters out. But if you fan the flame of the sage, it keeps burning and it keeps smoking and it keeps burning and it keeps smoking. And I'm open up to this idea of purpose that I am going to share. And a knock, it comes on the door and my son says, "Mom, what is that? It's really strong and it is filling up the whole house." And wham, the universe spoke. And it says, that is how purpose should be in your life, as your life. It should be a spark that you fan the flames of, and it should smell so strong it'll bring a teenage boy out of his room. It should permeate so much of the environment around you that your purpose is known even if you are in the other room. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our philosophy, says it like this: "You are immersed in and saturated with the vital essence of life. Its presence permeates everything, binding all together in one complete whole. That is you. You are the fire. You are the smoke. You are the whole. Our ancestors knew it, our spiritual ancestors and our physical ancestors. They were the smoke swingers and the pipe smokers. Does it make sense now? So you've heard a quote about purpose already this month from Rev Deb, but I'm going to share it again. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go and do that. Because the world needs people who have come alive. But I'm going to change one little thing that's going to allow us to dive into that quote about purpose from Thurman, Howard Thurman, a little bit differently. I'm going to change the word do to the word be, because we cannot do it all. We are trapped in our doing. We are consistently doing, but guess what? We can be something. In fact, as Ernest Holmes says, we can be the everything that we are. So this is what the quote sounds like with that little change. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and be that. What the world needs is people who are alive. It's so easy to lose sight of this original imprint that is our life, that which we are to be. And it's unique and it's individual. And each one of us gets to walk the path of discovery of this thing. But there's something that happens when we go searching for it and looking for it and asking it to come out from behind things and quizzing our mentors about it. It can hide. And I had the really great experience of reading a book last month called Just One Word by a woman named Erin Weed, W-E-E-D, which is really kind of funny because sage is like a weed and you burn a weed. And so now we're coming full circle with burning and weeds and sage. And this book is based on her work called The Dig. And she takes you through a process where you don't look outside of yourself for your purpose. You look at your life as it is, as you have experienced it. And one of the first things you do is you write an autobiography, but it's got to be quick. And in 10 minutes, you write down the story of your childhood, all the big events that come to mind. The freedom that I had to run into the woods, the encouragement that I was given to be authentic and bold, the support that I was given to be artistic. And you also write down the challenges. It wasn't so great that I had to have 3 parents because 2 of those parents didn't really like each other that much. There are hard things, but they are also a part of your story and your purpose. And then you write about your young adulthood and how, for me, I struck out on my own and I made things happen and I moved across the country and I got to be wild and free and resilient and support myself. And I made new friends everywhere I went. And you get 10 minutes for that. And then you get 10 more minutes for your life now. Those challenges and those successes. And as you're looking at this autobiography that you have written, themes start to emerge. Ideas come up. Whether you were a success or an abject failure, hiding in fear. That is the paradox of life. It will emerge regardless of what is happening in your life. There's a story about an admiral who went to war and was taken prisoner of war. And he was kept for years as a prisoner. And he was tortured for what he knew many, many, many times. And his colleagues were taken capture. But he survived and he escaped. And when he was asked, what was the difference between those who survived and those who didn't? He said, the optimists died of a broken heart. They were always expecting things to be better. They were always expecting to be out by Christmas. They had all of these hopes that were continually dashed. And then he says, and this is his quote, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail, which you can't afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality." And that's what purpose does. It appears when you have faith and when you are succeeding and when you feel on top of the world. And purpose appears when you have the discipline to look at the brutal facts of your life. It's all the same. And we get to be with that, living in this body on this planet. What a blessing that is. I, in fact, have had the great joy of witnessing my children confront who they are, have my children walk the path that they are in fear and in faith, in hardship and in success. And I would never be so bold as to say to my children, I can see who you are, even though from a very young age we all emerge with these wonderful little people that we are. You guys could probably imagine me as a 5-year-old, as a 10-year-old, as a 15-year-old. This little spark that I have always been, I have continued to flame, even when I was faced with the hard facts of my reality. And my children did the same thing. And I had to do the hard work of laying before them the consequences of their behavior and requiring them to take a look at their life. Because I know, just as we can do for our own selves, we can sit with the truth of who we are when it is celebrated and when it isn't going so well. That is purpose. It permeates everything. Our ancestors knew this. That is why the Bible talks about the burning bush. That is why in the liturgy, the Christians come in swinging their smoke. They want it to permeate everything. That spirit needs to move in and through all things. It is a symbol. And that is why the pipe smokers in the kivas and in the teepees had their rituals as well. It's like Rumi said, what you seek is seeking you, because it is everywhere, all the time, and you are required to express it. There's a rabbi that said in the final years of his life, as he was seeing that there was another world coming, this is Rabbi Zusia. He said, in the coming world, they will not ask me, why were you not Moses? They will ask me, why were you not Zusia? Ernest Holmes says that whatever this thing is seeking expression through everything. And it can only find satisfactory outlet through constructive and life-giving creativeness. And I think when Holmes said constructive, he meant things are going to get hard. What are you going to construct? It will get hard. What will you build? That is what we are doing here. So the last story I want to share with you is about an immigrant woman. She came to this country and she had a burning desire to perform. That was the spark that was within her. But instead of fanning the flames of that spark, she tempered them down. And she had a family. And she grew a business with her husband, and they were very successful. And she worked to keep the traditions of her culture alive for her community and her family. And the whole time, she was holding down this flame that was burning inside of her. And she held it down so long that she started to be afraid. And now I'll reference another quote that Tara said in her talk. Marianne Williamson shared that we're mostly afraid of our power. So this immigrant woman tamped down her power for so long, she started to fear it. So she went to the village healer. You know, the one who has the garden in the backyard and makes all the potions and tinctures and will sit with you and hear your hardship. She goes to the healer. She tells her her story. And the healer goes away and she makes her tincture. She brings it back out and she says, take this before you go on stage. And it will take away all of your fear. And I'm going to share with you the recipe. So if you want to write it down, now's your chance. Fear recipe. Fear reducing recipe. Yellow jasmine, peppermint oil, lunar caustic, and 190 proof of Everclear as a solvent. And if you are short on any materials or time, eliminate the jasmine, peppermint, and lunar caustic. But this is what I know, and this is what that spirit is telling us. You do not need Everclear. You do not need jasmine or peppermint or lunar caustic. You are the fire. Fan the flames of who you are and let your smoke stink up the whole world. I love you guys.